The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show. On this Saturday, January 3rd, I was expecting to do a completely different topic. Movie reviews are still in. I promised those. They will happen. But I woke up this morning and this news on Venezuela, and many of you went, I don't know, on Twitter and online and said, Yaron, you have to comment. You have to comment. Because today was a non-news day. It was supposed to be something else. Anyway, when the news happens, I have to comment, and it seems like you guys are particularly interested in my views on war. I mean, a lot can happen. Markets, stuff happens all the time. But if there's a war going on, everybody tunes into the Yaron Brook Show, which is great. Thank you, and hopefully you benefit from and enjoy the commentary today. All right, so as I'm sure you all know, Nicolás Maduro was being arrested through a military operation in Venezuela. We'll get into the details in a minute, and is currently on the way to New York, where he will either in New York. He's going to be indicted in New York, but he will face federal charges that are detailed in a just released grand jury indictment for criminal activity related to drugs and a drug cartel. He will face a trial by jury either in New York or in Miami in, I guess, the months to come. But he will be indicted. He will be arrested formally on U.S. soil in New York later today. He is currently probably in an aircraft carrier somewhere, and then will be transported by airplane to New York. All this transpired last night, starting just before midnight. U.S. planes from bases around the Caribbean and from U.S. bases. And so bases, I mean aircraft carriers around the Caribbean. But also, I have no inside information, but my expectation is that some of the F-35s came, and some of the other airplanes might have come from the Air Force Base here in Puerto Rico. About 150 airplanes supposedly participated in this, F-35s, F-22s, F-18s. F-18s are Navy, so they would have come from the aircraft carrier. F-35s could be either from the Air Force Base here or from an aircraft carrier. You also had planes in the air, a variety of different, planes, command and control planes, refueling planes, and of course planes to gather intelligence and information. Overall, as I said, 150 planes, and it seems like priority number one of all these airplanes in the air was basically to take out the air defense system that the Venezuelans had. Now, the Venezuelans had what military experts, and if you followed me, you know what I think of military experts. But this is from the Financial Times this morning. I think this morning. Yes, this morning. Financial Times this morning say military experts had warned that Venezuela's layered air defense network could complicate U.S. operations. But it apparently presented little or no resistance to the United States strike that captured President Nicolás Maduro. In other words, the U.S. took out the Venezuelans' air defense system in the first hour. This air defense system, the multi-layered air defense system, was comprised primarily of Russian air defense batteries, with the S-300 as the long distance one, and a variety of different others for short and medium term distance. As Israel has shown over and over and over and over and over again over the last 40 years or so, Russian weapons suck. As Israeli Air Force has shown over and over and over again, Russian air defense systems cannot deal with a modern, electronically advanced and stealthy Air Force. Israel did that in Syria. It did it in, of course, in Iran is the classic case where Iranian skies were Israeli. Well, the American Air Force has just shown the same thing in Venezuela. Russian air defense systems suck. I mean, even Turkey is trying to return the S-400 batteries that they purchased from the Russians a few years ago. They're returning them partially because it's a condition for receiving F-35s from the U.S., and partially because Russian air defense systems suck. So don't rely on it. If you're building a country and you want to defend against Western weapon systems, primarily U.S. Built airplane, don't buy Russian air defense system. Anyway, those airplanes basically, as far as we know, again, fog of war and all of that, and I have zilch, knowledge that goes beyond what I'm reading, and I listened to Trump's press conference a little while ago. So beyond what is being said publicly, I know nothing. So I'm just basically reaffirming what I have heard, and again, from what I've heard, they took out their defense system, and that allowed helicopters manned by special forces teams, including Delta forces and SEAL team. I think SEAL Team 6. They mentioned it was the same. Among the Special Forces group with the same team that took out bin Laden. It's different soldiers. I mean, it's a different generation. But SEAL Team 6, in addition to Delta Forces, in helicopters off of carriers off the coast of Venezuela, could safely basically come into Caracas. U.S. had very precise, very accurate information about the location of Maduro. They knew where he was in this compound where he was, and supposedly, again, I don't know, but supposedly there was a source high inside the Maduro regime that was providing the CIA with information. But if you take into account the NSA and satellites and drones and just the sheer quantity of U.S. intelligence resources that have been built up, I'm sure, in Venezuela over decades, they knew they knew of Maduro's whereabouts. They always know where Maduro's whereabouts are. I'll also add, so anyway, special force teams helicoptered into the compound. They faced some resistance from the ground. One of the helicopters was hit, but did not crash and continued flying and actually returned home. The troops were landed inside the compound. They knew exactly where Maduro was. Supposedly Maduro was trying to enter kind of a secure safe room when he was surrounded by U.S. troops, gave himself up, and he and his wife were taken into U.S. custody, boarded onto the helicopters, and flown out of Caracas, and as I said, onto some kind of aircraft carrier or helicopter carrier in the Caribbean Sea, and from there he will be moved to the U.S. to New York. This is an operation highly complex, difficult to pull off. Few militaries in the world could pull this off. You should remember that the Russians tried to pull off a similar operations in February of 2022, was it, when they tried to assassinate Zelensky. They had special forces land at the airports very close, right outside Kiev, with the idea of entering Kiev and eliminating Zelensky, and they failed. They were stopped there by Ukrainian forces, even though it was a surprise attack, and Russians had overwhelming force and all of that. they made the attempt to do what the United States just did in Caracas. They tried to do in Ukraine, and arguably, Ukraine is no better armed, was not better armed when Russia invaded than Venezuela is. Ukraine too had mostly Russian weapon systems, and it had some Americans, primarily some Western, primarily anti-tank weapons. But Ukraine managed to resist this. Here, there was no possibility that the Venezuelans could resist this. The only other military that has done stuff like this, and I think could easily pull this off, is the Israeli military. Arguably, some militaries in Europe could probably pull this off, but and maybe China, although China is a completely unproven entity. We have no clue what China can and cannot do. They haven't fought any war since a war with Vietnam in the early 1980s, or was it the late 70s? Anyway, early 1980s under Deng Xiaoping. They haven't fought a modern war. We have no idea what the capabilities are, other than what the capabilities are on paper, and that doesn't count. So really, there are only a few militaries in the world who could pull this off. European militaries, maybe. Israeli military for sure. In the U.S. Russia, no, we know, because they tried it in Ukraine. And that's it. Maybe China. Again, China's the only one that's a maybe, and maybe Europe. But the United States and Israel are the two that certainly could do this. Of course, Israel couldn't do it because they don't have aircraft carriers. They couldn't do it in this distance. But they proved with Iran that they can travel vast distances. All right, so amazing operation by the United States. They pulled it off. And the thing that I am most relieved of and most happy about is that the U.S. took no casualties. That is, we might have some injured Special Forces team members, sadly. An injury, we don't know how severe the injuries are, but it doesn't sound like it's serious. But it sounds like nobody was killed, and that's good, because priority in war should always be placed on, secondary to winning, should be placed on preserving your own soldiers' lives. So I'm happy that nobody died for the sake of deposing the dictator of Venezuela. So again, a well-executed mission, a complicated mission. The U.S. military performed, brilliantly. And succeeded in its mission. You could compare this to what happened in Panama in the early 90s under George Bush Sr. But there it was literally an invading and occupying force that moved into Panama. Panama also didn't have kind of the air defense systems that the Venezuelans had. But if you remember, Noriega, who was the president of Panama, who was also indicted for drug charges, and the invasion was justified as trying to arrest Noriega, just like trying to arrest Maduro, for drug charges. He escaped into the Vatican's embassy. And U.S. troops didn't enter the embassy. It's Vatican territory. But what they did, and people, I forgot this. I read about it this morning. What they did was they and I remember once I read it, I remembered it. They blasted music into the Vatican embassy for 24 hours straight for 11 days. They blasted heavy metal. Heavy metal into the embassy. And I guess the priests representing the Vatican at some point said, okay, Noriega, there's only so much AC/DC we can stand. Out you go. Out you go. And he surrendered to U.S. forces. So it was an example where heavy metal and heavy rock won a military diplomatic victory. But this is very similar, or the administration is certainly trying to position it very similar. George Bush, the invasion of Panama, did not ask for authorization from Congress, which is going to be important for how the Trump administration will position this. They've already positioned this. This was a police action, not a military action. Bush presented it the same way in Panama. It was a police action, not a military action. Reagan invaded Grenada. I can't even remember why he invaded Grenada. But anyway, he invaded Grenada. He did not ask for congressional approval. You know, the fact that there was no congressional approval here will be justified in terms of precedents that are related. You know, there was no urgency here with regard to Maduro. Certainly, it could have received congressional approval in a general sense, deposing Maduro or regime change in Venezuela without giving specifics. But Trump is not going to do that. That's not what Trump does. And indeed, he is quite the opposite. Could have been done months ago with the buildup in the Caribbean Sea. They could have gotten congressional approval. But again, it does not seem like modern presidents have, you know, taken Congress seriously when it comes to the deployment of U.S. Military force overseas. This goes back to Vietnam and maybe even before that, but certainly since Vietnam. All right, so from a military perspective, this was an achievement. Let's see. Now, the question, of course, so legally, I don't think they're going to face much problems because, again, there's precedent for this. Why did they do this? Why did they do this? So what is the stated arguments for this? And we'll get into what I think the strategic consequence of this is. Rubio, if you ask Rubio why they did this, he says, well, there was a dictator. He was oppressing his people, bring democracy to Latin America. If you ask Hegseth why this was done, Hegseth says it's about drugs. You know, they were smuggling drugs into the United States. America first. We need to stop drug flow into the United States, and we can discuss whether that makes any sense. But we did it for the drugs. And indeed, the legal justification for what was done is the indictment that is being brought against him, a federal indictment, a federal grand jury is indicted him and his wife and his son over drugs. So that's the official reason. And Trump, you know, gives the Trumpian reason. And Trump is very clear about why he thinks this was done and why he wanted to do this. Oil. It's about oil. It's all about oil. And again, we're talking a little bit about legitimacy or illegitimacy of that as a motivation. So we're getting different stories from different people. One thing the administration also, in terms of legitimacy, is emphasizing and talking a lot about is the fact that Maduro was an illegitimate president of Venezuela. That is, that he had actually lost the election in 2024, and therefore he was not the legitimate president. So this was not about a regime change in that sense. This was about arresting a fake president, somebody who was an illegitimate position. This does not violate international whatever law and so on. This is kind of the argument that they're making. You know, the Trump administration clearly is saying, and I'm quoting, Maduro is not the president of Venezuela. Maduro is the head of the cartel de los Soles, a narco-terror organization which has taken possession of a country. He is under indictment for pushing drugs into the United States. That is the official reason for what happened last night. All right. Now, before we get into, well, one other thing I want to say. A big question now is, and this will really determine, I think, the meaning of all of this. The big question is going to be, what happens now? What happens now? Does this mean the Maduro regime is over? You know, as last we heard, his vice president, his handpicked vice president, has been sworn in as president of Venezuela, not the opposition, not the so-called the legitimate, the people who won the election, but Maduro's vice president. Trump, in his press conference, mentioned a number of times that now the United States runs Venezuela. They control Venezuela. They run Venezuela. this is a U.S. territory, the way he was talking about it. He was asked several times in the press conference to clarify that statement, and he really couldn't. He just repeated the same thing. We control Venezuela. We will now allow American oil companies into Venezuela. We will control the revenue flow that comes from the oil. Venezuela will get some of that oil. The oil companies will get some of that revenue, and even will compensate Venezuelan migrants in the United States with some of that money, and some of them might even stay in the United States. MAGA can't be happy about that statement by Trump about some of the Venezuelans staying in the U.S. They want to kick 100 million people out of the U.S., including the Venezuelans. He's basically saying, we will control Venezuela. We will determine its fate. He said that Marco Rubio had already talked to the new president of Venezuela. The vice president was sworn in, and she's willing to cooperate with America and do whatever we want. Who knows what that means, and who knows if that's even true. When asked about Mercado, the woman who just won the Nobel Peace Prize instead of Trump wanted it, she won it, whether she would be the next president of Venezuela. She had just praised this. She'd praised Trump. She said this was amazing that Maduro had been opposed. She looked forward to Venezuela being free and all of this, and Trump. I mean, this classic Trump. Trump basically said, "No, I don't think she's going to be the president of Venezuela. She's not very popular in Venezuela. She's not really. People don't really like her." Which to me reads, and I know you're going to say it's just Trump derangement syndrome, but that's okay. To me, that reads as, she won the Nobel Peace Prize instead of me. I'm not going to give her Venezuela. There's no way she's getting Venezuela. She got my Peace Prize. I get to get Venezuela instead. Again, how to say exactly who is going to govern Venezuela. The opposition in Venezuela supposedly is in the streets and intends to take control. But look, taking out Maduro does not take out the entire hierarchy of the Maduro and Chavez regimes, which are basically based on the military. The military, the police, the armed people in Venezuela are regime affiliated. If it had been so easy to overturn this regime, then the opposition would have done it a long time ago. It turned out it's not that easy. Now, will the United States require now Venezuela to hold real elections and see where real legit elections? Will they require it tomorrow or in a few years? What exactly happens? I don't think anybody knows, other than somebody asked Trump who is going to run Venezuela, and he says the people standing behind me, which is basically Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth, are going to run Venezuela. How does that work? Does that mean ground forces enter Venezuela in order to secure the ability of Marco Rubio to go in and run Venezuela? Do they run it from afar with the existing government? Do they run it from afar with a new opposition government? All of that is up in the air. How do you actually manifest the ability to take over the oil fields of Venezuela? Hard to tell. But there's no question. Look, what just happened is a clear signal to the Venezuelans that Trump is serious and that they better straighten out and that they better behave themselves. So I am sure that the vice president, even though she's from Maduro's party, is not going to behave herself and going to be a lot friendlier to Trump and a lot more open to doing what Trump tells them to do. So that, I think that is clear. But is this the beginning of liberty and freedom and the end of dictatorship in Venezuela? Not clear. I mean, it could be that the United States manages Venezuela, controls Venezuela through the existing dictatorial regime, who is now open to working with the United States. Don't know. And it's hard to tell what's happening in Venezuela right now. I see a lot of people, pictures of people celebrating Maduro's arrest, but hard to tell if those pictures are coming from Venezuela or they're coming from other countries where Venezuelans have emigrated to. So, for example, I saw some pictures of people celebrating. Turned out it was Madrid. I'm sure in Miami you've got a lot of celebrations. It's going to be interesting to see the extent to which this actually prompts the opposition and the people of Venezuela to go out into the streets and demand the replacement of the regime in totality, not just of Maduro, but the regime in totality. Okay, pause there for a second. And what we're going to do is, what I want to do is cover a little bit of, let me see if I can find this. I had it here open. Yeah. Of the history. We'll do this quickly. Of the history of Venezuela. I want to give you some context about what happened in Venezuela over the years, and how we got to where we are today. And then from there, I want to go to kind of what strategic importance does this have? Because I think it does have. I think anytime America asserts itself in the world, there are real consequences. Even when administration is confused, like this administration is confused about what the strategy is, I think there are real strategic outcomes of this, whether explicit or implicit. So there are going to be, significant implications for this, and most of them, I have to admit, are positive. But let's quickly review the history of Venezuela. I mean, Venezuela was granted independence in 1810, and it declared independence in 1811 after years of brutal war. In spite of that declaration, led by Simon Bolivar, independence was secured in 1821. And Venezuela briefly joined a Bolivar federation called Gran Colombia, which was the whole of kind of northern Latin America, South America, but it left it in 1830 to become a separate republic. Constant instability, like a lot of South American countries, chronic political instability, regional strongman, civil wars. There's a big federal war, 1859 to 1863. And institutions and the country institutions were crushed, and the country generally suffered from extreme poverty. This was a poor country, bad governance, and badly run, as many Latin American countries indeed were. Some of this changed in the early 20th century. Basically, in the early 20th century, oil was discovered in Venezuela and ultimately off the coast of Venezuela. What ultimately turned out to be the largest oil reserves in the world. This oil was the revenue from this oil started funding big infrastructure projects, urbanization, and really an economy that was single sourced, like so many countries that have discovered oil. It became the primary revenue source for the government. There was early part of the century was dictatorship. There was a civilian democratic government in 1958 that ruled until 1998, and relatively stable democratic governments for 40 years. Standard of living were rising. This is a period in which Venezuela was, on a GDP per capita basis, the richest country in Latin America. So oil, resulted in a lot of wealth. However, it was a very corrupt system. That is, this is not capitalism. This was a system of the equivalent of oligarchs, a system of cronyism. A corrupt system that relied on one industry to provide oil. Now, I say in one industry, other industries existed. For example, Venezuela had a robust agricultural industry that not only fed itself, but allowed it to export food. We'll get to that, the decline of that in a minute. But there was significant resentment within Venezuela, primarily among the poor, to the fact that people were getting super rich off of oil, but primarily because of corruption. Most of the technology, the ability to extract the oil and to exploit the oil, That knowledge, that capital, came in from the United States, from American oil companies. We'll get to the American oil companies in a minute, and but Venezuelans officials and a variety of oligarchs again were getting super rich from this oil. Let's see. In 1999, Hugo Chavez launched the Bolivarian Revolution. I think Simon Bolivar would be horrified by Chavez. Chavez was a socialist, a committed socialist, a explicit socialist. His program basically involved state ownership of the means of production, redistribution, massive redistribution of wealth, and huge anti-U.S. Rhetoric and sentiment. Hugo Chavez aligned himself with Cuba and other anti-American regimes in the area, and of course with Russia, and in the long run under Maduro with China. During Hugo Chavez's term, we'll get to oil in a minute, but one of the things that happened is agriculture, for example, was nationalized, was socialized, was owned by the government, or really by the military. Indeed, the military was granted basically most of the industry, most of the businesses in Venezuela were handed over to military officials, which made the military officials, the generals, the colonels, the majors, it made them relatively rich. It made them want to make sure the regime sustained itself because they were directly benefiting from it. As we'll see in the 2000s, Chavez also nationalized the oil industry. And as a consequence, what you saw is a dramatic decline in oil production. By the time Chavez had died in 2013, people were hungry in Venezuela. Venezuela could not produce enough food to feed itself. It had a massive refugee problem. That is, refugees were leaving Venezuela and settling in refugee camps in Colombia. There was mass poverty. Again, huge corruption. Primarily the beneficiaries of being people within the military and within the Chavez regime. As socialism always does, Chavez's socialism produced death, destruction, poverty, starvation, and massive corruption. Massive corruption. In 2013, Nicolás Maduro replaced, when Chavez died, he was his vice president, so he took over. He presided over continued economic collapse, ultimately hyperinflation, mass emigration out of Venezuela, and a increasing authoritarianism. Indeed, in the last election in Venezuela, Maduro clearly lost. Pretty much everybody who looked at it knew that he had lost, and yet he maintained power and ruled, even though he wasn't recognized really by anybody. Okay, quickly, oil nationalization. Between 2006 and 2007, there had been some nationalization before this. I don't want to make it out, since from the beginning of Chavez's rise to power, small-scale nationalization and taking over contracts of U.S. oil companies had been pursued. But in 2006, 2007, this happened on large scale. Venezuela ordered all foreign oil companies operating in the Orinoco heavy oil belt, and we'll get to heavy oil and its importance in a minute. They ordered them all to accept a minority stake of 40% or more by government entities or leave the country. Companies refused the offer of a minority stake of 40% or more, and the state oil company, PDVSA, seized the assets. The two major U.S. companies affected were ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips. Both of them, their assets were seized, and they exited Venezuela. Chevron stayed, it actually accepted Venezuelan state ownership, and Chevron actually stayed and is still functioning in Venezuela under some significant accommodation of the state of Venezuela. Between 2007 and 2019, the Venezuelan government claimed that they had paid fair compensation for the assets that they confiscated. But an international arbitration ruled that Venezuela owed ExxonMobil $1.6 billion, and that they owed Conoco about $8 billion. Venezuela failed to pay for both of those. As a consequence, the assets of Venezuelan government were seized abroad. Caribbean refineries owned by Venezuela, oil shipments were seized in order to claw back these funds from Venezuela. Again, during the same period of time, 2009 to 2012, other assets owned by oil companies were seized. Oil service companies, refineries, storage facilities, power and infrastructure assets tied to energy. All of these affected American and European firms. They basically were seized by government. And of course, the consequence of that are not only that these companies lost revenue and lost their property rights, but beyond that, their efficiency, their productivity, their ability to produce oil, refine oil, produce power and electricity all declined substantially, dramatically, as a consequence. Venezuela did steal American oil, and to Trump's credit, he uses that as justification for going after the Venezuelan regime. Now, imagine if Eisenhower or Kennedy or Johnson or had used that or in this case, who was president, George Bush Jr., if they had used the seizure of American oil assets as an excuse to replace the Venezuelan regime, the Iranian regime, the Saudi regime, and so on, to replace them when those countries confiscated oil assets of U.S. companies back then. They did not, and that's partially what emboldened the Venezuelans and other countries to do so. Indeed, it was Eisenhower that forced the French and the British back when they tried to reclaim the Suez Canal, which Nasser had nationalized, had confiscated from the British and French private company that had built the canal and owned the canal and ran the canal, and it was taken over by the Egyptians. All right, what else do we need to know in terms of history? Yes, I mean, just to comment on drugs, I think it's worth. Let's shift basically to discussing the strategic importance of what happened, and we'll start with the context of drugs. Before that, I want to say something. A lot of people watching, 315 people watching live. That's a lot for this show. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate it, and I hope to see you back here. Those of you who are not subscribers, please consider subscribing to the Yaron Brook Show. There are probably quite a few not subscribers, but you will get alerts when I go live about the next war and many other things that I comment on, as I have on many issues, and given people a background and context and about all these things. So please subscribe to the show. Also, if you like any aspect of this, please press the like button. The 329 people now. It should be 329 likes. And the reason the like doesn't cost you anything, and the reality is that liking the show really helps with the algorithm. The YouTube algorithm really likes engagement, and liking the show counts as engagement. So please like the show, and it'll help. We've got 100 likes. We should have 300 likes. So please consider liking the show. It's, again, cheap, easy, and you can do it on your phone. You can do it on, wherever you're watching this. It is easy to do. What else do I want you to do? If you want to, please participate in the chat. Comment, chat, say something. Again, YouTube really likes lots of participation. They like engagement. You get rated on engagement by YouTube. And finally, if you're listening and you gain value from what I'm saying, or from my approach to this, or from the information you're getting, some of the history you're learning about this, or as we'll get into the strategy, the analysis of that, please consider supporting the show. You can ask a question using the Super Chat, as some of you are doing, and that is fantastic, and that is great. You can also just do a sticker, which means a dollar amount towards the show that does not involve asking a question. It's just a sticker support. It's a dollar support, value for value. Trade with me. You're getting this free. Well, should you be getting it free, you should be paying for the stuff, the value you get. And one way to pay for it is to like the show, to subscribe to the show, and consider making a financial contribution towards the show. And you can do that by becoming a member. You can do and press the membership button, or you can do that by doing a super chat or a sticker. You can do stickers or super chats at any amount, $2 all the way to $500. $500 is the max. I see lots of questions for $2 and $5, some $10. Be great to get some 20, 50 would be nice. We have targets on the Yaron Brook Show for fundraising for these shows. The targets are $250 an hour. So we have now 18 minutes to make our first $250. We would need another $180 over the next 18 minutes. That's $10 a minute. I think that's doable. Thank you, Natural Observatory and John and Mary Arlene for the stickers. Please consider jumping in with a sticker. We could easily make that target if all of you came in to trade with me. All right. One other aspect of Super Chats that I encourage is, if you ask questions about the topic we're doing, then you can actually shape the show, right? You can get me to talk about what you want. You can ask questions relevant. You can interact with me. I read all my Super Chats. I answer all Super Chat questions, even insulting ones, even ones that don't agree with me. So please consider doing that. So thank you. All right, let's talk about some of the strategic implications of this. Let's talk about drugs, which is, the nominal excuse for all of this. I mean, this will have no impact on drugs. Zero, zilch, nada. Drugs coming into the United States, very few of them come from Venezuela. Venezuela is has a massive industry of exporting drugs from Colombia, but it's not to the United States. Almost all the drugs that the Venezuelans export go to Europe. They go first to Africa, and they use Islamist militants, Islamists in Venezuela, but then in North Africa, to smuggle drugs across the Atlantic to Africa, and then from Africa to Europe. The consumption of cocaine has gone way up in Europe over the last few years, and all of that cocaine comes from Latin America, and it is the Maduro regime that has been funneling those drugs to Europe. But the reality is, this is not going to. You don't take up the top of the pyramid, and somehow this stops. He will be replaced. There's just too much money to be involved. It's not even clear how important Juan Maduro was to the drug trade. Even if the United States clamps down on drug trading in Venezuela, again, there's too much money to ignore here. They will find other routes. There is no way to win the war on drugs. The war on drugs is a bogus idea, a bogus mission, a bogus war, a bogus attempt. And indeed, all these indictments around drugs, and look, Trump's not serious about drugs. He doesn't care about drugs. The fact is that he pardoned the former Honduran president, who was indicted for drugs into the United States. And from Honduras, they do indeed come to the United States. They travel through Central America all the way north to the United States. But he pardoned him. He doesn't care about drugs. Drugs have no relevance to Trump. He doesn't care one iota about them. So the fact that that Maduro is indicted about this is irrelevant. It doesn't matter strategically. It makes no difference. Drugs will continue to flow no matter what the United States does. The demand for drugs is so large. It's so intense. The profit from drug trade is so enormous that no way is anything the United States. Remember the war on drugs when we bombed fields in Colombia? Did that stop the amount of cocaine coming into the country? And the reality is that most of the overdose deaths in the United States, the overwhelming number of overdose deaths in the United States, are the consequence of fentanyl. Fentanyl is not a drug coming from Colombia or Venezuela. It is a drug that is produced with chemicals from China in Mexico and smuggled across the U.S. border. The only way to stop fentanyl, and you can't, you never will, they'll always find ways in. But if you wanted to pretend that that's what you were doing, you would go after Mexican cartels, not after not after Venezuela. So this has nothing to do with drugs. It doesn't matter to the drug trade. Most cocaine is still grown in Colombia in spite of what, the war on drugs has been going on since the early 1970s when Nixon declared it. It has made zero dent in the flow of drugs. All the war on drugs does is it makes drugs more expensive and therefore more of a profit opportunity and therefore more violence and more murder and more drugs flowing into the United States. So you want to solve the drugs? You want to do away with overdose deaths? The only way to do that is to legalize drugs. Not just decriminalize them, but legalize them. Legalize them completely, 100%, and then drugs will be safe. The profit margin will drop to basically zero because they're just a commodity. Nobody will have an incentive to kill anybody over drugs anymore. Violence will decline dramatically in Latin America and in the United States. And, overall, that is the solution to drugs. So this idea that drugs and drugs coming into the United States of some kind of strategic importance is absurd and ridiculous. Again, we've been fighting a war on drugs for 55 years with no success, zero, zilch. And this will have no impact on it. It doesn't matter. It's completely bogus. So that, gives Trump legal cover for what he's done, but has no strategic value for the United States in and of itself. Really no strategic value for the United States. Now, Trump has said, and the one thing that this is intended to do vis-a-vis drugs and might have an effect is he has said, hey, President of Colombia, you're next, right? He said he needs to watch his back. It might be possible as a consequence of that. That some of these political leaders will be a little bit more cautious, but it's not going to change the dynamics. It's not going to change the fundamental flow of drugs. Drugs have been flowing out of Colombia for decades, and it doesn't matter who the president is there. It doesn't matter what they do. You could have a war against drugs in Colombia. Colombia is too big of a country, too many jungles, too ungovernable in what they grow to be able to stop the production of cocaine. So it's irrelevant. And of course, maybe this is a warning sign to the Mexican cartels that the U.S. can fly into any one of their strongholds and take the leadership. I mean, that's true. And maybe the cartels will now live in greater fear. Well, will that stop them from smuggling drugs into the United States? Does that stop them from smuggling drugs into the United States? Absolutely not. By the way, in terms of legalizing drugs, fentanyl is used in medicine in the United States every day, right? You go in to get a procedure like, I don't know, an endoscopy or colonoscopy or something like that. What do they give you to knock you out? Fentanyl. But it's high quality fentanyl that is reviewed as a medical thing. If drugs are legalized, You wouldn't have fentanyl-laced cocaine. You wouldn't have fentanyl-laced heroin. Fentanyl might be sold as a drug, but it would be sold in high quality. There would be, just like in any market, there would be, market regulation of the quality of the product. Customers would not buy from a producer who produced and sold bad products. I mean, imagine markets applying to drugs, and you get much higher safety, better quality use, truth in advertising, and retailers who are selling the drugs stand behind the product. You just don't get the kind of stuff where somebody's smoking a joint and it lands up being laced, or taking a Xanax and it lands up being laced with fentanyl. That would not happen if it was legalized. All right, back to strategy. So drugs, I think, is a bogus issue. The solution, again, is legalization, complete legalization. It's not delusional. You know, there are plenty of products out there that are not killing you, that could be killing you, and if you made them illegal, would kill you. The quality of the alcohol you drink is far superior in a free market than it was in Prohibition. Far superior. And the quality of the drugs that you would take would be far superior under legalization than otherwise. But anyway, this is not a show today about legalizing drugs. Maybe we can do that another time. My point is, no effect on drugs, because Mexican cartels, while they might live in fear now more than they did before, the profit margin is too large to stop this. They're just going to continue. And if one cartel stops, another cartel will pick it up. No way is this going away. Drug will always continue. Always continue. Somebody says on the chat, the highest estimated weekly income for a cocaine cartel was $420 million per week. There's no way they're stopping that, right? That is going to continue. Nothing Trump has done to stop that. Okay, so the second argument was about bringing freedom to Venezuela and bringing freedom to Latin America and standing up for freedom. I don't for 1 second believe that is a motivation. I don't believe Trump cares about freedom, anybody's freedom. I don't think that's a motivation. And it's yet to be seen what actually happens in terms of freedom. Indeed, this was the whole argument of America First. We shouldn't be bringing freedom to the peoples of the world. We shouldn't be imposing freedom on countries. We shouldn't be engaging in Operation Freedom to Country X. This is the basis on which the whole agenda of MAGA is based. They don't want to bring freedom to the world. They're not interested in bringing freedom to the world. Now, again, I think Marco Rubio's instincts are in this direction. His emotions lead him there. He is a pro-freedom kind of guy. He comes from a more neoconservative background, and he's inclined that way. But Trump doesn't care about freedom in Venezuela. And we're yet to see what the political outcome in Venezuela is actually going to be. Is there going to be more freedom in Venezuela? Is that what Trump is seeking? Is there regime change? And if there is regime change, to what? Still unclear. And it's not clear that taking out the Venezuela is going to bring freedom to other places. Now, you would say that the rulers in Cuba are going to be worried now. On the other hand, Cuba has no oil, and Cuba has no drugs. It's not a source of drug thing. So it's not clear what the U.S. would use as an excuse to go after the Cuban regime. Maybe they will anyway. One can hope, but I'm doubtful that it will happen. This is, though, strategically, clearly an expression of U.S. asserting power in the region. This is the United States embracing something like the Monroe Doctrine. We are going to pursue our interests in Latin America. This is our region. Stay out. We'll get to China in a minute. Stay out. We are going to do what we want in this region. We don't really care about what anybody thinks. This is ours. And this is the first time the Monroe Doctrine has really been asserted in many, many years. Post-Vietnam, really, the U.S. has not been very assertive except in the Middle East. We did get Grenada and we did get Panama, but those were small. Venezuela might turn out to be small as well. We'll see. Maybe it'll be more substantial in terms of military presence. But this is definitely an assertion of American power in the region. In particular, this is also a statement about oil. Oil is crucial to the United States strategically. It is something that the United States, for a variety of reasons, oil is going to play a huge strategic role throughout the world. The kind of oil that Venezuela produces is a heavy oil. Now, don't ask me what that actually means. I don't know. All I know is it's a particular type of oil. It's called heavy oil that the United States doesn't produce itself. The United States produces light oil, not heavy oil. And yet, many of our refineries in the South were built to handle heavy oil. There are basically three sources of heavy oil that I know of, large sources of heavy oil in the world: Venezuela, Canada, and Russia. Heavy oil from Canada, the idea was that we would build a pipeline. You remember the XL pipeline? KL, what was it called? Keystone pipeline that was going to come in from Canada down to the south where the refineries are to transport heavy oil to the refineries. Alas, that was never built because of the Obama administration, because the Biden administration, because of a variety of environmentalist groups stopping it. And Trump has not really resurrected that and not been able to get that completed. He didn't manage to get it completed in his first term, and he hasn't been able to complete it now. The other source of heavy oil is, of course, Russia. We're trying not to buy oil from Russia, the bad guys. And then Venezuela, where we have basically placed an embargo on heavy oil for Venezuela in response to Chavez and Maduro's actions, an embargo I was never supportive of. Is video lagging? I guess there's some lag in the video and audio. I'm not sure why. My internet connection seems to be fine. Let me just check to see if it's on my end. It might be on YouTube. I don't think it's the number of people watching. Somebody speculated it's that. Let me just check my internet connection. 1 second. Internet connection seems fine, so I'm not sure what it is, what is going on, why it's happening. What can I do here? I was going to say refresh your browser, but that might not be good. So audio is good, video is a bit delayed. Some people are not having problems on video. Some people are having problems with video. It sounds like it's complicated. Yeah, I mean, upload speed is very slow. That is weird. I'm wondering what's going on. Download speed is fine. Upload speed is low. God, is anything else consuming upload? Let me just check one more. Let me see if I can get this fixed. If not, we'll just run with it. And as long as you have the audio, I guess you're fine, or some of you are fine anyway. It's the U.S. Army. Yeah, they're electronically freezing me out. Yeah, upload speed is definitely slow, much slower than it usually is. Take a few minutes. You might have to refresh your browser, so it's buffering, but that'll get fixed in a minute. So once the buffering is done, it should be, the picture should be smooth and smooth sailing. Okay, we're back. All right, where was I? All right, so heavy oil. So the only real source for heavy oil that the United States can get is Venezuela. And it's a big deal. A big portion of our production capacity in terms of refineries is related to heavy oil. And if we did this, we did it probably because of oil. But here's the thing. This has geopolitical implications because of the oil, but also because it makes a statement. China has real ambitions in the Latin America, in the South American area. It wants resources, whether those are different minerals. It wants oil. Indeed, China buys a lot of oil from Venezuela, often sanctioned oil. And China, after Trump came out with his new, latest, security strategy, which I critiqued on the show a few weeks ago, he basically announcing kind of a new Monroe Doctrine. China basically came out with its own statement 2 days ago, December 31st, so 4 days ago, came out with its own statement and basically said that China is not going to give an inch to the United States and Latin America. China is going to maintain its influence in Latin America, is going to fight for it, is going to keep it, not fight for it militarily, but it's going to try to keep its influence in Latin America. Well, I think the message China got today was, forget it. That you're not going to be able to dominate Latin America. We've got Latin America. Latin America is now ours. So stay out of here. If America really does get control over Venezuelan oil fields, then America indirectly has control of basically all the oil reserves in the world. No audio. And yet, most of you are saying you've got audio fine. So what I suggest if you don't have audio is refresh. Of course, you can't hear me because you can't hear. Refresh your screen. If the United States gains the oil, and I think this is the most important point of all of this. If the United States gains control of the oil in Venezuela. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world, greater than Saudi Arabia. Then the United States, directly and indirectly, will have leverage over the entire supply of oil in the world with two exceptions. Exceptions are Russia and Iran. In other words, China, which depends on oil to run its economy and natural gas to run its economy, will have nobody to buy oil from. I mean, they can buy from Russia and they can buy from Iran, but there's only so much they can buy from those countries. Iran might be experiencing regime change soon and might be under great American influence soon. And then China only has Russia. Imagine what happens if China invades Taiwan and the United States alliance puts an oil embargo on China. No oil from Venezuela, no oil from the United States, which is a producer, no oil for Guyana, which is right next to Venezuela and has huge oil reserves, no oil from the Middle East because the United States has a lot of leverage in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the other Middle East countries. China is in trouble. China's in deep, deep trouble. So, this is in terms of, if this is really about oil, and if the United States does control the oil coming out, this is massive, massive. And it now makes Iran even more important, because Iran stays the one last source of oil for China, with the exception of Russia, which is limited. And if Iran falls, China's isolated in terms of its access to world energy markets. It can still buy, but if it ever goes to war, if it's ever sanctioned, it could be really squeezed. I think that if the United States gains control of the Venezuelan oil, the probability of China invading Taiwan goes down. If the Iranian regime falls, I think the probability of China invading Taiwan goes to zero. China cannot afford it. I mean, where will they get the fuel for their ships? For any kind of prolonged war. Now, oil prices, might go down. They might not. Even if Venezuela, it will take a few years. Venezuela oil is in the sea mostly. It's hard to reach. It's expensive to exploit. It's not easy. Massive capital investment will have to go into there. We're talking about a few years before you actually see the fruits in terms of oil flowing out there in quantity, lowering the price of oil. But Saudi Arabia could clamp down on the amount of oil it produces in order to drive prices up again. So it's oil prices are a function of supply and demand, and supply is not fixed. Supply can change. One country can increase, another country can decrease. It's hard to tell where oil prices are going to go in the future, though it's likely they're going to go down in the near term, or at least when Venezuela oil comes into production. But it's not for certain, because other countries could reduce the amount of oil they produce. Guyana, that country next to Venezuela, which has a lot of oil, its oil is now being produced, so it now is pumping more oil into the world markets. It's one of the reasons oil prices have come down. Now, that's the other aspect of this. Oil prices going down is bad for which country? Well, it's bad for OPEC, but, the United States supposedly is allied with OPEC. Who is it really bad for? It's really bad for Russia. Indeed, I've seen online many Russians panicking, pro-Putin Russians panicking. Russia's war is basically being funded by oil sales. If global oil prices go down dramatically, which they could over the next few years, if the United States takes control of the Venezuelan oil reserves, then Russia is going to be squeezed. So in terms of strategy, I think all the benefits around oil, reverberate to our relationship with China and with Russia. We don't need oil. The United States has plenty of oil itself. But being able to control indirectly, even indirectly, the majority of the oil being produced in the world gives the United States massive leverage over China, and driving the price of oil down gives the United States massive leverage over Russia. And this helps. This is, again, the largest oil reserves in the world. The United States taking it back and basically returning it into the hands of American oil companies. That is a positive move. And if that is the motivation, if that's what's going to happen out of this, if that's the ultimate outcome, if this is really about oil, then I'm all for it. See, I don't believe the United States should go out and be the policeman of the world. I don't think the United States should be out there engaging in a war on drugs. I don't believe the United States should be out there even bringing freedom to the world. People need to fight for their own freedom. But I do believe we should help people fight for freedom to the extent that we can. And I do believe that when, governments steal, nationalize assets of U.S. companies on scale, as Venezuela did, the United States government should step in to protect them. And since we didn't protect them back in the mid-2000s, not a bad idea to do it now. Now, Trump has mentioned this as a reason for what he's done, and to that, I give him credit. He's the first president ever that I know of that has actually made a big deal out, and a big deal in a sense of the United States being willing to go out there and actually protect property rights in this sense. I don't think he thinks of it property rights, but it doesn't matter. He's the first president I know of who's actually been willing to state that and make that statement. And for that, I give him credit, even though I know it comes from a very shallow, superficial, narcissistic place, and not from a real respect for property rights or real respect for the protection of American real national interests or any kind of meaningful national interests. Finally, we talked about Cuba that is now wide. I want to cover one other topic. I want to cover a little bit the response to this from various parts of what do you call the political landscape, which I find really fascinating and really interesting. So we'll cover the response. I want to remind you guys that this show doesn't fund itself. It is funded through support from you. I couldn't do this without you. I produce the show for free, but I expect to trade. And one way in which we can trade is you can like the show. Just press a like. You can subscribe to the show. And you can financially support the show by doing a super chat or a sticker. And there are enough people on there that we should be able to reach our goal very, very easily and very, very quickly. But we are short of even our first hour goal, never mind our second hour goal. And we are definitely well into our second hour. So please consider supporting the show. You can ask questions about this topic. I will be doing the movie reviews as well. I might do the movie reviews after I answer the questions that are relevant to this topic. So we finish this topic, and then we'll do questions on the topic, and then we'll do movie reviews, and then I'll do general questions. Plenty of time to ask questions, plenty of time to trade with me, value for value, plenty of time for you to challenge me or to ask challenging questions and to push me on certain issues on the Super Chat. Please do so. Again, engagement helps with the algorithm, and financial engagement help with financing the Yaron Brook Show. All right, here's Marie Le Pen. Marie Le Pen. Marie Le Pen is, of course, the leader of the far-right political movement in political party in France. This is what she writes. There were 1,000 reasons to condemn the regime of Nicolás Maduro, communist, oligarchic, authoritarian. It had imposed on its people for far too many years a suffocating yoke that plunged millions of Venezuelans into misery when it did not force them into exile. But there is one fundamental reason to oppose the regime change that the United States has brought about in Venezuela. Guess what that is? The sovereignty of states is never negotiable, regardless of their size, their power, or their continent. It is inviolable and sacred. To renounce this principle today for Venezuela, for any state, would be an accept our own enslavement tomorrow. It would thus be a mortal peril at a time when the 21st century is already the stage of major geopolitical upheaval that casts over humanity the constant threat of war and chaos. All that remains for us is to hope in the face of this situation that a voice be given as soon as possible to the Venezuelan people. It is for them to reclaim the power to define sovereignly and freely the future they wish to forge as a nation. Now, here's the thing about this. This is a powerful statement. Sovereignty, the sovereignty of states is never negotiable. This is the nationalist perspective. This is the nationalist conservative perspective. This is the perspective that no state has a right to intervene in another state, that all sovereignty is sacred and finite, and that one has no right, even in face of a dictator, to unseat the dictator. Now, this is the exact opposite of the position that Ayn Rand held. Ayn Rand held that sovereignty comes from the protection of rights, from the protection of individual rights. That is, that a regime that is dictatorial is not sovereign. A regime that's authoritarian is not sovereign. Now, that does not mean that other countries should depose the leader. But it does mean that it's 100% moral from the perspective of the country that's being deposed that their leader be deposed. That is, the United States owes nothing to Venezuela and owes nothing to their sovereignty because they're not sovereign, because they're ruled by a dictator. If the only purpose of government is the protection of rights, then states that do not protect rights are not sovereign states. In that sense, Iraq was not sovereign. Iran is not sovereign. Venezuela is not sovereign. Russia today is not sovereign. And assassinating their leaders, replacing their regime, is completely moral. It's completely okay. It's only a question of your own interest in doing so. Sovereignty comes from the people. It does not come from the leader. It does not come from drawing lines on a map. It does not come from force. Sovereignty comes from the people, the individual. The only thing that's sovereign is the individual. So individuals can elect a government and give it sovereignty. Otherwise, all governments are illegitimate unless they are protecting the rights of individuals. That's what gives them sovereignty, not some artificial, I'm the dictator because I have a big gun. I have a big gun. So, while Ayn Rand was not for democracy, absolute democracy, the sovereignty has to be gained through protection of rights. And authoritarians, dictators, are never sovereign because they violate rights. Now, you can imagine a authoritarian state that did protect rights. Singapore is the one is an exception. It mostly protects rights. You would argue that that is a sovereign state because it protects the rights of individuals in the state. But almost no authoritarians protect individual rights at any level. So Venezuela is not sovereign. The U.S. is still sovereign, yes. It still, for the most part, protects rights. But you can imagine the United States becoming non-sovereign when it stops protecting those rights, if it becomes an authoritarian. I know, controversial view, but a true view, a right view, Ayn Rand's view. Okay, that opposite of the nationalist view, which is sovereignty because of history, because of tradition, because of, I don't know, why it's what makes it sovereign. Who? I don't know who you mean. All right, let's see. What else did I want? That was Marie Le Pen. Here's Seneca. Now this is not about this. This is about the other bombing in Venezuela a few days ago. But I assume it applies the same way. Seneca writes, I agree with Steve Bannon. There you go. You get the left agreeing with the right. I agree with Steve Bannon that Trump is acting like Hillary Clinton at her neocon peak, bombing all over the planet, Nigeria, Somalia, Venezuela, and going back into Iran for regime change is completely neocon establishment behavior. Now note this. Why do we have to fight all of Israel's wars? One thing that's common about the responses, particularly from the far right and the far left, is they're blaming Israel for it. All right. I don't see him on my, I can't block him. Somebody, do we have somebody who can, I can't block him because I can't see him. He's not in my feed. This thing, Scotty Too Hardy, can somebody block him? Miroslav, are you there? Or maybe Action Jackson, if Christian, if you're there. Can you block this Scotty Too Hardy? For some reason, I can't do it. It's at Scotty Too Hardy. He's been commenting nonstop. Now I don't know why I can't see him in my feed, but I see him. Miroslav, I see him. Yes, I'll block him. Okay. All right, you guys got him. Good. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. I for some reason, I could see him. This is from Miroslav. I could see him in the Super Chat tracker. I couldn't see him in my YouTube feed, which is weird. Usually I see all the comments in both. Weird. Anyway, Israel's wars, all right? Let's take Tucker Carlson. This is, again, from before, but I assume it applies to today. Maduro, whatever his many faults, and I wouldn't hire him as an economist, he has the most socially conservative country probably in the hemisphere. Venezuela has banned pornography, banned abortion, banned gay marriage, banned sex change, and banned usury. This is Tucker. Tucker would ban usury, among many things. So, you know, there you go. It's, they like Maduro. Tucker likes Maduro, kind of. Likes Maduro. Let's see. Nick Fuentes originally was against military action in Venezuela just 3 months ago. He warned that an invasion could activate domestic terror cells and plunge America into an insurgency. Where these hysterical nutcases and really pretty stupid people get this stuff from, I don't know. But as of this morning, he has changed his tune. And this morning he said, I've literally never said no more foreign conflicts. I support U.S. empire. I support the Monroe Doctrine. I support hemispheric defense. I always have, says Nick Fuentes. Anyway. Now he's saying, and then a little later he said, a little later in the morning today, he said, initially seemed like a solid operation to cleanly, bloodlessly, and quickly remove Maduro from power last night. But this new policy of running Venezuela with U.S. soldiers sounds like a massive overcommitment. I have zero confidence in nation building. Big mistake. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. Very unhappy. I've served on Homeland Security Committee for the past 3 years. I'm 100% for strong, safe, secure borders and strong narco-terrorists and cartels, and stopping narco-terrorists and cartels from trafficking deadly drugs. Miroslav, he's come back under different names, so please block him or Action Jackson. You guys take care of whoever, they keep coming back. In different names. Anyway, so she's all for stopping the cartels. And then she says fentanyl is responsible for over 70% of U.S. drug overdose deaths. And fentanyl comes from Mexican cartels made with chemical precursors from China and trafficked across the U.S.-Mexican border. Mexican cartels are primarily and overwhelmingly responsible for killing Americans with deadly drugs. If U.S. military action and regime change in Venezuela was really about saving American lives from deadly drugs, then why hasn't the Trump administration taken action against Mexican cartels? And if persecuting narco-terrorists is a high priority, then why did President Trump pardon the former Honduran president, who was convicted and sentenced for 45 years for trafficking hundreds of tons of cocaine into America? Ironically, cocaine is the same drug that Venezuela primarily traffics into the United States. The next obvious observation is that by removing Maduro, this is a clear move for control over Venezuelan oil supplies that will ensure stability for the next obvious regime change war in Iran. So, Marjorie Taylor Greene, representing a certain wing of MAGA, is very wrong, very anti this. She goes, Americans disgust with our own government's never-ending military aggression and support of foreign wars is justified because we are forced to pay for it. And both parties, Republican and Democrats, always keep the Washington military machine funded and going. This is why many MAGA thought they voted to end. Boy, were we wrong. As the baby boomers slip away, both in votes and power, the electoral future will be decided for candidates that focus on American economic populism and promising prosperity for Americans only. Let's see, who else? This guy, Ian Malcolm, some anti-Semitic guy on Twitter. A few months ago, he wrote, this is actually a year and a half ago, in July of 2024, he wrote, so Maduro, a Jew, maintains power in Venezuela while Jews in Israel escalate conflict with Lebanon, having already set up a conflict with Iran, while the UK's new Prime Minister, another Jew, launches the Keir Starmer era of politics. Why are Jews all over the global political whatever? What the hell? And then today he writes, right? Today he writes, so the MAGA peace president who promised no new wars is just blowing up anyone Jews ask him to. Is that it? Is this not treason? So Jews asked him to blow up Maduro. The anti-Semites never stop. By the way, I thought I had it. Yeah, there's Candace Owen saying basically the same thing. Candace saying, Is this? Yeah. Well, Venezuela has been liberated, like Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq were liberated, in quotation marks. The CIA has staged another hostile takeover of a country on the behest of the globalist psychopaths. Guess who those are? That's it. That's what is happening, always, everywhere. And here is the key. Zionists cheer every regime change. There's never been a single regime change that Zionists have not applauded because it means they get to steal land, oil, and other resources. Hope this helps. So again, even this is Zionists and Jews. They're responsible for everything. And finally, the Qatari government is upset. The Qatari government does not like this. The state of Qatar expresses its deep concern over the current developments in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, calling in this context for restraint, de-escalation, and adoption of dialogue as the appropriate measure to address all outstanding issues. So we know the Qataris are upset. Maybe Trump will back. We know, therefore, what's his name? Tucker's position will be as the official representative of Qatar in the United States. We know that he will be upset as well. All right, there you have it. My take on this, it's mixed. Overall, great, performance of our military. If indeed the opposition gets the control and you get actual elections in Venezuela, this will turn out to be ultimately a good thing. We could also, if the United States, through an actual what do you call it? Actual proper government, legitimate government in Venezuela actually gets to control the oil. This will be a huge geopolitical victory for the United States in a sense of both restraining China and maybe putting Russia into a real problem. Okay, now we have this guy. This guy, I can stop. Let's see. Remove. All right. Either I got him or Christian got him. Somebody got him. No, Miroslav got him. Thank you, Miroslav. Miroslav got him. Oh, I was trying. Yes, there are plenty of trolls out there trying to disrupt the show. Okay, that is what I have to say about this invasion. I'm happy to take questions about this topic right now. If you want to ask a question, don't do it in the chat. Don't do it in your own head. Actually put it together on a super chat and send it over. We are way behind on our goals for today, so please consider supporting the show so I can do these shows as events happen. They have to be profitable. They have to make sense. The Iran shows that I did and the Israel shows that I did, we got massive super chat support. So I'm not sure why Venezuela show should be any less profitable for the Yaron Brook Show than an Israel or Iran show. So if you want me to continue these, show me some love. All right. All right. I'll get to Andrew's question later. All right. Dan, what are the risks of the only effective uses of U.S. military in decades being associated to someone like Trump? I mean, it's horrible. And this is maybe what makes this overwhelmingly negative. Even when Trump does something good, only bad can come of it because he is such a horrible human being and such in a global sense, such a horrible president. So when Trump does something good and that good gets associated with Trump and Trump's views and Trump's attitude and Trump's action, that is, right? That is, does not bode well for the future because people will start associating that kind of action with all his irrationality. And it elevates Trump, one, which is bad, but it elevates a relationship between his just grossness, his immaturity, his bombast, his irrationality with somehow a competent military. I mean, I would say that the military is competent in spite of Trump. Trump has luckily nothing to do with the military. They are competent in spite of him, not because of him. So yes, they bombed Iran, and that was good. That was one of the good things he did. This might turn out to be good. There's some things that he did, but to the extent, like moving the embassy to Jerusalem in his first term, to the extent that those actions get associated with Trump attitude, we're in deep trouble. So even when he does something good or semi-good, it's not good for the country long term. And now I know the accusations of TDS will implode. NM says maybe sometimes Trump has a strategy. I don't think he has really a strategy. Now, the people around him who have a strategy, whether it's good or not, is a question. I don't think Trump himself has strategy. Some of the people, again, I think Rubio has a strategy, and Rubio's been advocating for doing this for a while. He's been anti-Venezuela and regime change in Venezuela for a while. There might be people in the Defense Department that understand how this affects China and how this affects Russia. I don't get any sense from the news conference and from other times that Trump has talked about this stuff that he is, that he is in any way strategic about these issues. All right, Neo. Seems like the UAE and Saudis are also in conflict in Yemen. Oh, I'm going to answer that afterwards. I'm just going to answer this stuff. There's a bunch on. Real Spark says, will Mamdani give Maduro heroes welcome in New York City? No, I don't expect so. Although I'm sure Mamdani will condemn the operation and what the U.S. did, just as Bernie Sanders will and OAC will. John says, Trump 2028, God help us if that happens. Carl says, blasting the music to get your opponent to change. See Sopranos episode where Tony wanted to get out of a deal. Good story about blasting the Vatican embassy. Yeah, it is a good story, and they did that. Action Jackson says, what should be done to or about Venezuela now? What should be done to Maduro and his wife? Well, Maduro and his wife will face a court of law based on the drug laws that we have in the United States, and I'm fine with that. That's the law. They should face the consequence of the law. You know, they might be pardoned ultimately by Trump. Who knows? But for now, they will face a jury, a judge and a jury. In terms of what should be done with Venezuela, it should be handed. What the United States should insist is that this should be handed over to the opposition party that won the election, and then the opposition party should basically organize an election as soon as feasible, within months, I guess, and return Venezuela to a kind of a democratic state. As part of that, the United States should insist on the privatization of Venezuelan oil assets, and that everybody should be able to bid for. American companies, European companies, Venezuelan companies, anybody should be able to bid for. I think the Americans would win or the Europeans would win, but it should be an open bidding unless you can tie some of it to compensate the two companies, Conoco and what was the other one? It wasn't Shell. Anyway, compensate them, Mobil, compensate them for the asset theft that happened a couple of decades ago. So some process needs to be where the oil assets are not held by the government at all anymore. So that has to happen as part of the process. And hopefully that's what will happen. We'll see. That's what should happen. Cook says, been looking forward to your reaction to this. Thanks for a swift show. Of course, now you guys need to come through in terms of trading with me for the swift show. You guys cooked it, but everybody else needs to as well. All right. Catherine says, do you think Canada, Greenland, and Panama could be the next goals of the U.S. administration, or do you think they are busy with Venezuela, Iran, and U.S. itself? No, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know what they do. They might go. I don't think they'll do anything about Canada. That's far-fetched. But Greenland is certainly possible. And I certainly think that if China maintains ownership of the ports in Panama, that Panama is possible. And I also think that Cuba is possible. Marco Rubio, in the press conference this morning, indicated that Cuba would be next. I wouldn't be surprised if some kind of operation happened in Cuba to try to overthrow the regime. Again, I don't think Trump is super motivated because there's no oil. There's nothing for him to immediately benefit from it. But who knows? I mean, Rubio will be pushing, and maybe Rubio's bought some credibility with the Venezuelan thing, and he'll be able to get a Cuba thing. Greenland is, of course, the trickiest one because it means going to war with an ally. Not a very long war because, I mean, it's not like Denmark would actually fight America. But it would shake up global politics in a way that I'm not sure the Trump administration wants to engage in. I mean, that would be the opposite of Venezuela. That would be a massive strategic error. That would be a massive, massive handing a gift to Russia and China. And you can ask me about why, but if the United States tried to take or took Greenland, but it's possible. All right, let's see. Yeah, Andrew says, is narco-terrorism an anti-concept? Terrorism does not denote victims who choose to risk their lives. Yeah, I mean, narco-terrorism is, I mean, look, terror, anybody can terrorize, so terrorizing is possible. But terrorism has come to mean a political, a political goal. So you're terrorizing people with a political goal. And narco cartels are not about a political goal. They're about a monetary goal. They're about a financial goal. They're about the ability to sell drugs and continue to sell those drugs. So, yeah, no, I think it's an anti-concept. Terrorism is a political issue. Narcotics are not a political issue. They're a crime issue because they've been legal. Somebody says that the European Union would fight on the side of Denmark. It's not going to happen, guys. I mean, Europe is not going to go to war with the United States. It ain't happening. I mean, basically what will happen is Denmark and the EU will be super upset with the United States. They'll yell, they'll shout, they'll make accusations, I don't know, boycott something, they'll condemn Trump, they'll have a UN resolution and all of that, but that'll be it. I mean, the U.S. would basically annex Greenland, and nothing would happen. What is the constitutional legality of removing Maduro? I mean, I don't know. From what I understand, there's a warrant for his arrest. It's a police action backed up by the military in order to facilitate it, in order to serve a warrant. Now, I don't know how U.S. law treats the issue of serving warrants outside the United States. I don't know. So I don't know how you would think about this from a constitutional basis. To the extent this is war, Congress has to approve it. All I'm saying is it's got the same constitutionality as Noriega and as Grenada and as a bunch of things the United States has already done. There's nothing new here to litigate, and nothing was made of those. I don't expect anything to be made of this. WCZN, I think Bannon et al. Misread Americans. They don't hate wars. They hate losing wars. I think that's right. I think you're right. Of course, they don't want to enter into wars because they're convinced they're going to lose them. But you're right. Once they win them, Americans will come around to support them. Action Jackson said, I like Venezuelan shows because I really like history segments. Thank you. Let's see. Real Spark says, Christians wanted peace in early century AD. They taught civilization survives if people respect one another. It's absolute nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense. I mean, what's his name? God, the first Christian emperor. The first Christian empire was a man of war, and he used Christianity to motivate his troops. And the cross. When the cross became popular in Christianity, when the cross really was brought out and started to be a symbol of Christianity, it was under Constantine. Constantine, not Charlemagne. Constantine used the cross to motivate his troops to go fight and slaughter and kill. And his whole so-called conversion to Christianity, if it ever happened because he claimed to have seen a cross in the sky. God was on his side in being victorious over the other army. There was nothing about wanting peace in Christianity. And indeed, Augustine writes writes about justifying war in the name of Christianity, in the name of converting people to Christianity. Violence is okay if you're doing it for a good cause. So Christians did not want peace, maybe pre-Constantine Christians, but they were meaningless and got overruled very quickly by Constantine, by Augustine, by the fathers of Christianity that came after them. They're the ones who shaped Christianity. Christianity is not nowhere near a religion of peace. It is a religion of war. It always has been a religion of war. Just ask the victims of Charlemagne. Ask the victims of Constantine. Ask the victims of all the various. Constantine legalized Christianity, not in 200, in the 300s. Yes, he legalized Christianity and became emperor and fought in the name of Christianity. And Augustine justified, his just war theory justifies fighting in the name of Christianity to kill people. And the Crusades were not exactly peaceful anywhere in the world. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. Daniel says, notably absent was Vance from the press conference. Do you think he's trying to placate the libertarian twits? No, I think it wasn't appropriate. We'll see what he says in his statements in the days to come. We'll see how all this evolves in the days to come. But I wouldn't read too much into his not being there. Yeah, before World War II, U.S. tried to restrict Japan access to oil and steel. Japan launched an attack while they still had supplies. Any worry China does the same. I mean, there is, but I think China is going to look at Japan as an example of the problems in doing that and the reality of that the world might respond not by defending Taiwan, but by placing an oil embargo on them after the fact. And do they really want to have an oil embargo on themselves? Probably not. That's probably problematic for China, and I think they can look ahead enough to be able to not want that. All right, let's see. James, as a vet, how do you see military disability for vets who receive long-term damage from the military? Is it justified to receive payments for life when your injuries never improve? Why are New York Times and news outlets targeting vets? So I don't know. I haven't seen the New York Times and other outlets targeting vets. I've missed that. I don't doubt that they are. I just don't know what the context is for that. I'd have to read that. But look, yeah, absolutely. I think that if you get injured in the military then should compensate you for the rest of your life for the injury that you take. Now, I don't believe that there should be a Veterans Affairs Department in the government. What I think, it should be a monetary compensation. The government should guarantee you to buy you an insurance policy that you can then, in private markets, that covers your pre-existing conditions, so an expensive insurance policy that covers your existing conditions, and you should be treated in hospitals by normal doctors under such an insurance policy. But that should be something the government provides you with in compensation for the fact that you got hurt. It should be part of the contract that you sign when you sign up for the military. Japan partially came close to winning World War II because it managed to capture militarily oil in some oil. I can't remember where, Malaysia or wherever it was. There was some oil wells there, and they could access them. But that also caused them to be overextended. which arguably caused them to collapse. I mean, the Nazis, if you study history, one of the reasons the Nazis invade Russia and what are they attempting to go to? They want, and invade North Africa, is that they want oil. They want the oil in Saudi Arabia. They want the oil in Azerbaijan. They are driving through to get to the oil. Oil is a strategic asset. And you could argue that that's one of the fundamental mistakes that both the Nazis and the Japanese made, is the supply lines got too extended. They couldn't reach the oil supplies, and that's what killed them. And one would expect a country like China to figure that out. That's my response. Real spoke, they were killed by lions in the arena for a very short period of time. The persecution of Christians by the Roman Empire lasted a very short period of time. It is overblown and overrepresented in Hollywood movies. But the reality of history is that Christians were persecuted under the Roman Empire, under one emperor, and again, it became an official religion under Constantine, an official religion, one of the religions, and then it became the official religion under Justinian, I think. So, early Christians promoted peace, the very early Christians, because they were weak. That's the only reason. As soon as Christianity gained political power, they advocated for violence. As soon as they gained political power, they advocated for violence. Christianity, as a successful religion, which is what it ultimately was, a successful religion. Christianity, as a successful religion, was a very violent religion, as violent as Islam. Yeah. All right, we've got a few more questions, but those questions I have to wait until after my movie reviews. I've got movie reviews to do. And we're going to cover those, and then we'll take the questions. You do have more time to send in a sticker or do a super chat. I will answer questions after these movie reviews, so please consider doing that. Again, I remind you, these shows cost money. My time is money. You are trading with me, value for value. If you get value from the show, if you got value from this show, please consider doing a quick sticker or something, or super chat. Super chat, the advantage of super chat is you get to ask a question. You get to determine what I'll talk about. You get to shape the show in some way. All right, 2 movie reviews today. Unrelated completely to Venezuela. The first one is Ford versus Ferrari. Ford versus Ferrari. This movie is streaming online. I'm trying to remember where. I think it's on Netflix, but I'm not committed to that. I watched it recently. I've watched it twice now. This is a movie with Matt Damon, Christian Bale. Those are the main 2 actors in the movie. It's directed by James Mangold. We'll get to that in a minute. I really like this movie. I think it's really well done. It's a movie based on the true story of the development of the Ford Shelby GT. This was the GT40, which was developed in order to beat Ferrari at Le Mans, and to try to, this is during the 1960s, to try to change Ford's image from a staid, comfortable, boring, kind of middle-class auto company to a more sporty image, and to generate sales for cars like the Mustang. And so it's basically, the movie focuses not on Ferrari, it focuses completely on Ford, and on Ford's attempt to build a supercar, to build a car that can compete with Ferrari. It covers the period between 1962 and 1966. And the goal is to beat them at Le Mans. Le Mans is a racetrack in France. It's a race that is raced over 24 hours with a 4-man team that take turns driving the car with pit stops and driving the car. A very, very difficult race to engage in, but it's very prestigious to win. And Ferrari was dominated Le Mans. It was just dominating, winning every time, winning all of it. And Lee Iacocca, the marketing director at Ford, who later went on to be the CEO, the famous CEO of Chrysler, the guy who kind of saved Chrysler from bankruptcy. Really, Reagan saved Chrysler out of bankruptcy by inventing the minivan. So Iacocca, who brought us the minivan, also brought us a sporty Ford. His whole marketing ploy was we need to make Ford more youthful. We need to make Ford more exciting. And John Ford the second, who was CEO of Ford Motors, bought into the vision, and they hired a car designer, automobile designer, and racer by the name of Carroll Shelby to design the car. And I won't tell you how it ends. You can be in suspense. But Shelby designs the car. Shelby's quite famous. Shelby designs the car. He brings in a British race car driver, Ken Miles, to drive the car, even though Ken Miles is hated by almost everybody. And throughout the movie, Shelby and Miles, primarily Shelby really, are fighting the Ford bureaucracy. This is very much a movie about the entrepreneurial spirit. This is very much a movie about the advantage of small, flexible, quick decision-making on the fly versus kind of the bureaucracy of a large corporation. This is a theme in American business. This is true in American business. You know, when IBM decided to build a PC, they realized they couldn't do it under their existing structure. They created a small, entrepreneurial, independent group that reported directly to the president of IBM in order to develop the PC. The same thing here happens. In order to develop the GT40, they had to create this unit that reported directly to the president of Ford. So it really depicts that effectively and efficiently, I think. It's really interesting, the political dynamics within Ford. It's really interesting to see the entrepreneurial spirit really concretized in a movie, made real in a movie. And as I said, the movie's very well made. I mean, the driving scenes, if you could watch this on a big screen television with good sound, they're super dramatic, and you really feel it. You really feel it. So it's a really exciting movie that is worth watching. You can still get, I don't know if they still make the Ford GT. For a while, Ford GT was a $150,000 car. A few years ago, it was still being made faster than a Ferrari. There were also, Shelby was taking Mustangs and changing them, and they were selling them under the Shelby brand, souped up Mustangs. And that existed until about 10, 15 years ago. I don't know the full history. Anyway, the movie itself, really good. I highly recommend it. It's, again, well-directed, well-acted. Particularly Christian Bale does a great job as Ken Miles, who's quite a character in the movie. Matt Damon. I like the car scenes. I like generally the movie as a whole. What else does James Mangold directed? He directed 3:10 to Yuma, which was a good movie. Not as good as the original, but again, you had that sense of suspense. He's very good at creating drama and suspense. He's good at that. He did the Bob Dylan biography, which I haven't seen yet. That's on my list to go watch. He also directed one of the Indiana Jones movies and one of the Wolverine movies. But yeah, highly recommend Ford vs. Ferrari. He also did Logan, which I don't know anything about. Not the kind of movie I watch. But Ford vs. Ferrari, thumbs up from the Yaron Brook Show. I really enjoyed it. And good both acting, directing, and a great story. A story you should know because it's kind of, I think it really is an ode to American entrepreneurial the entrepreneurial spirit in many, many ways. All right, second movie, and that was, who wanted me to review that? I think that was Shazbot. John wanted me to review the movie Better Man. Better Man is a movie, it's a weird movie. It's a movie about a pop singer, a boy band pop singer, who is incredibly successful, hugely successful, but unbelievably miserable. Drugs, alcohol, sleeping around, can't maintain relationships. Really horrible. I'm going to give away the ending, but that's fine. To the point of almost committing suicide, and then finding redemption and cleaning up his life and happy ending, right? So the movie is very much, in many respects, a standard movie about pop stars. In this case, it's a true story. It's based on a true story of Robbie Williams, who was a British pop star. I've never heard of him, never heard of his music, never heard of him. But he was a big deal in, I guess, the 90s. In the 90s, it was a big deal as a pop star during that era. Is considered one of the greatest entertainers of all time. Robbie Williams basically narrates the movie. So it's a movie about his life, and he's narrating it. The gimmick of the movie, the thing that makes the movie different, I mean, it's well made, even with the gimmick, but the gimmick that differentiates this from all the other movies about rock stars that succeed enormously and then, but are never happy because of drugs and alcohol and sex and whatever, is that the character of Robbie Williams is actually portrayed by a CGI monkey. A CGI monkey. From the beginning, Robbie Williams' character is a monkey. He's a monkey as a child, because it deals with his childhood, and it's a monkey throughout the movie, which is jarring and weird. Now, it's supposed to be a metaphor for who he is, what kind of a human being he is. He's not human. We'll talk about what philosophy drives him and what's bad about it. But so it's supposed to be a metaphor for that. I don't know that it really works. It's more gimmick than anything else, in my view. He's a chimpanzee, he's a monkey, which is his character, his soul. His soul is the soul of a monkey. But it doesn't really work, because when he redeems himself, when he becomes human, he doesn't turn into a human in the movie, which you would think, if you want to play the metaphor all the way through, you would, at the end of the movie, a human being should have, he should evolve into a human being, which he doesn't. It didn't really, once you get used to it, it doesn't really bother you. But I still think of it as a gimmick rather than anything else. Generally, though, the movie's very well made. The CGI, by the way, monkey, you can't really tell. I mean, you can in a few places in the movie, you can tell CGI, but mostly you can't really tell it's CGI. So it's very well technically done. It's well directed. The story is a good story. So the basic issue is, and this is the problem I have with it's a problem I have with the movie we'll get to in a minute, but basically the issue is that Robbie Williams, from when he's a young child, is a complete second-hander. All he wants to do is please others. Fundamentally, he wants to please his father. So it's got a kind of a Freudian thing. He wants to please his father. His whole life is about pleasing his father. But then, his whole life as an artist is about pleasing the public. It's about pleasing his audience. Even when he gets real and he gets, he starts writing his own lyrics, and the lyrics are actually not bad. He only does that when he's pushed to do it by his producer. He just wants to sing stupid stuff that'll please the public. He doesn't want to reveal his soul, which is monkey-like. And in that sense, he's a monkey, right? He's just playing to the audience. He's, and because he's second-handed, and this the movie does very well in showing, because he's second-handed, his soul is empty. he is miserable. He is unhappy. He's depressed. And he uses drugs and alcohol and sex as an escape, which is exactly the fate of soulless, second-handed people. Second-handedness leads to that emptiness and to that nothing to live for, no reason to live, no values. Because what's the reason to live? Values. But you have no values. Everything is about other people. Everything is about their values. Everything about what they want, what they desire. You are nothing. And I think that happens to every second-handed person. They become soulless, miserable, unhappy, depressed. It's a good theme. It's well made. It's entertaining. The one downside, I'd say, is it's unconvincing in his change at the end. Like, it's not like he identifies his nature as second-handed and commits to personal values. Now, there's something about him committing to different values. He seems to become a different type of entertainer. He seems to be singing songs that he really cares about rather than trying to please, maybe. But the transformation, where does it come from, is not well presented in the movie. It's as if he reached such a low depth, then he comes to some realization that changes him. I don't know. So the transformation into a first-handed person with values and which the movie ends on, that transformation is unconvincing. It's not clear where it comes from. And clearly it happened because this is a true story about the life of Robbie Williams. But I'm curious if Robbie Williams can introspect, can identify what actually caused it and how the change was achieved. That would have been really, really interesting. But anyway, another movie I give a thumbs up in spite of the gimmick, because I think it was well made, entertaining, and the second-handedness. Second-handed means everything is about the other. Everybody, you're living through the experience of others. You're only trying to please them. It's their reaction to you. It's narcissism. Second-handed is the fundamental nature of a narcissistic being. And again, alcohol and drugs and sex is an escape to try to regain some feeling, to try to get a sense of self. Try to get a sense of self. But of course, it's not a good way to get a sense of self. It's an impossible way to get a sense of self, and therefore it goes nowhere. It is not successful. Director of this is a guy named Michael Gracie. So he did a good job, I think. He's made other movies all around music. So he did Rocket Man, which I think is his most famous movie. He did a movie about Pink. He did The Greatest Showman. Rocket Man was Elton John. I enjoyed that movie. I liked his movie about Elton John. This one, Elton John, of course, I know. I like Elton John. This one was about somebody I didn't know. And again, it had this gimmick, which I don't think it needed at the end of the day. I really don't think it needed. All right, those are the two movie reviews. Next week, I'll be reviewing Ride the Tiger by Evola, which is a nonfiction book and a philosophy book, if you could say so, if you could argue that. And the week after that, we'll finish up The Forks in the Road. All right, we've got a few remaining Super Chat questions. We'll go through these, and we'll call it a day. Again, I hope you liked the show today. And if you did, please jump in and support the show and express the fact that you liked it with financial support. All right, we'll start with Andrew. Mark Levin thinks the essence of political ideological enemy in America is Marxism, Islamism. What do you think of that? What would you name as the political concept that represents the current main threat in America? Yeah, I certainly would include Islamism. while Islamism is a threat, it's not the political ideological enemy. It's an external enemy. Islamism is coming from the outside. Its impact internally inside the United States is minimal. It really is minimal. There are very few Muslims here, and there are very few Islamists. They don't represent a significant threat. I would say left. I would say that the ideological threat is two-pronged. It's leftism, which is primarily today postmodernism. So a postmodern left, which is all the woke and intersectionality and all that, which is not particularly Marxist in its nature. So I think it's postmodern leftism and right-wing religious nationalism, or religion and nationalism, the combination of the two, but even the two separate. So it's on the left, and there's not just one enemy. That's one thing I disagree with Mark Levin on. This is why he can be in a coalition on the right, because there's one big enemy. I think the enemy is postmodern leftism and nationalism and religiosity on the right. Those, I think, are the two enemies. Eliminosa, be radical in principle and absolute in will. Accept no borrowed reality of life. Give yourself without calculation. Become what the bourgeois call an extremist. Live so their world cannot contain you. Never abandon struggle. That all sounds like Ebola. Is that Ebola? I disagree with every single sentence in there. Every single sentence. Be radical in principle and absolute in will. What does will mean? I agree with radical in principle, but you should be radical, period. I don't like the whole terminology of the will, which comes from Nietzsche. Maybe it's more ancient than that, but that it's a very destructive terminology. Accept no borrowed reality of life. There is no borrowed reality of life. There's just reality. And then there's life within reality. See, Ebola is primacy of consciousness. So reality of life is something created. It's not something in existence. Give yourself without calculation. No, you absolutely should calculate. This is pure emotionalism. This is pure giving into the primacy of consciousness. You want to calculate. One thing you won't find in Ebola is discussion of reason and rationality. Not in a positive way anyway, but he almost doesn't discuss it at all. If he does discuss it, it's negative. Become what the bourgeoisie calls an extremist. Well, yeah, but a particular kind of extremist, an extremist of reality, extremist of reason, of life, of rationality. Live so their world cannot contain you. Yeah, if you properly understand what that means, and again, I don't think Ebola does, never abandon struggle. Why? There's no value in the end of struggle. That's only a value in a world that requires struggle. Dara, hi Yaron. It's Dara. We met at How the Light Gets In. I was with my friend who was also a big fan. I really like a live, I rarely get to a live show. Thank for everyone who makes the show possible financially. Thank you, Dara. I really appreciate that. Andrew, you're on a roll. What is up with you? I think Andrew won the lottery or something. I mean, God, the number of super chats he's doing with the amounts. Thank you. Wow. I got a raise. He won the lottery. I don't know. Anyway, I'm thankful. Thoughts on Christian implication. One should love and pity the poor who are in misery. Pity is a rare, intense empathy in camaraderie with a loved one's serious loss. I'm not sure that's what it really means. Since the poor always exist, one should live in misery for the sake of their existence. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. The meek shall inherit the earth. The poor are the standard of everything. You should, as a Christian, as a good Christian, you should love the poor. You should sacrifice for the poor. You should live in misery for the poor. That's what pity means, rare, intense empathy. You should have empathy, constant empathy for the poor. You should feel like in camaraderie with the poor. And of course, you should sacrifice for the poor. That is a pathetic life. That is a horrible life. That is a life of complete self-sacrifice and inability to live a good life. And that's what Christianity explicitly demands. Very few Christians live up to that because it's so painful. It's so go against human nature. It's so go against human inclination and nature and so on. So very few Christians live up to it, but that's what Christianity demands. That's the evil of Christianity. That's what we must rebel against. We must rebel against Christianity. I'll give this to Evola. Evola is anti-Christian. He's definitely rebelling against Christianity, just like Nietzsche does. But his alternative to Christianity is in many regards worse than Christianity, if you can imagine that. But yes, we should not pity the poor. I mean, you should feel sorry for the undeserving poor, but not to the point of it dominating your life in any kind of way. It should be a temporary emotion, not a state of being, which is what Christianity demands. All right, let me thank some of the sticker people, because we got a bunch of stickers. Jeffrey, thank you. Jeffrey Miller, thank you, thank you. Let's see, who else? I saw Wes here. I'm pretty sure Wes was here. All right. There is RMK, thank you. Really appreciate the support. P. Forrest, thank you, Paul. There's Wes. G. Jeffrey, thank you. Wes, thank you for the $50. And then this show's been a long show. Let me go to the top, see if I can capture the people at the top who gave stickers. Yeah, Andrew, thank you. And I think it's a different Andrew. And say something. Mary Aline, thank you. And John, thank you. And Mary Aline again. And Barry, thank you. And whoops, there he goes again. Anyway, I think I've caught almost everybody, so I really appreciate anybody who gave a sticker. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Really appreciate it. We really made up the gap. We're going to go through these last few questions pretty quickly, and then I'm off to dinner. All right, I like numbers. You accept Islamism wants EU domination, but you think it's unrelated to Mamdani calling to globalize the Intifada, that it's just a hipster talk. Yes, I do. I really do. I don't think Mamdani has a real vested interest in Islam or Islamism in particular. I think it's like all those kids yelling globalize the Intifada on campuses. Very few of them understand what they're yelling and hold what they're yelling. It's more of a statement about hatred of Israel and wanting to see Israel end. I think Mamdani is hostile to the West and would like to see the West replaced by with a socialist utopia, but I don't think his socialist utopia is Islamist. I just don't think he's I don't think he's a Trojan horse of Islam. I think he's fundamentally secular. I mean, I might be wrong. I think the same about the mayor of London. I don't think the mayor of London is particularly Islamist. He's a Muslim who is a socialist. He's terrible because he's a horrible leftist. You don't have to double up. And he's sympathetic to Muslims, but he's not an Islamist. His goal is not Sharia law. His goal is the egalitarian horrors of socialism. Neo, seems like the UAE and Saudi are also in conflict in Yemen. Anything you know about that? Yeah, I mean, they're each supporting different groups that oppose the Houthis, that are in conflict with one another. Exactly why they can't unite and defeat the Houthis is beyond me. Why they're attacking each other is beyond me. You'd think the Saudis and the UAE would be united. So I don't know the details of it. I'd have to research it more. But I did notice that suddenly, they're in dispute, and Saudi Arabia actually bombed a UAE ally in Yemen. Doesn't make any real sense. But, you know, that part of the world doesn't make sense. It's very tribal and horrific. All right, equal to reality. What is the best way to filter out all the nonsense that the world throws at us so you can force on your own values? I mean, the best way is just to focus on your own values. Is to center yourself, not on the news, not on the world, not on Trump, not on what is going on anywhere in the world, but focus, spend real time and energy on your own values, identifying them, striving to achieve them, embracing them, enjoying them. That's what your whole life should be centered around. And then for the news, listening to your Yaron Brook Show and getting it out of your system and then going on and pursuing your values. But it's really organizing all your effort, all your concentration, all your time. What are my values? What do I love? What I want to do? What I want to create? That's what you should be focused on. What is the best Puerto Rican food item? So it's a Puerto Rican food item, probably sweet plantains, but I don't know. I mean, my favorite Puerto Rican dish is a eggplant and lamb dish at a restaurant here. In terms of Puerto Rican food, that is my favorite food. It's incredibly flavorful, and it's got eggplant and lamb, minced lamb. Bradley, what's stopping Elon, Bezos, etc., from embracing Rand? They've all read Atlas Shrugged and resonate with it. Are they just closet objectivists? No, I mean, they obviously reject objectivism. Elon is too much of a subjectivist and an emotionalist to embrace kind of the rationality and reason-based morality of Rand. He's rational and goes by reason in his business side and in his personal side and his political side and his cultural side. He's a complete subjectivist and emotionalist. Bezos, I don't know well enough, but many of them still embrace elements of altruism. Many of them just don't get what's so important about philosophy and are not interested in philosophy, core philosophy. They've succeeded in life without one. Why do they need one? I think each one has their own reasons, but I don't think any of them are closet objectivists. Not a single one of them. Daniel, you gave Trump credit for mentioning oil, maybe, but I interpreted his statement more as an imperialistic and collectivistic champion, not an act of justice to oil companies. He keeps mentioning the oil companies. He keeps mentioning compensating them. He keeps bringing that up. Somebody has whispered that in his ear, and he keeps bringing it up. So I get where you're coming from, but he does say it explicitly. I'm not putting words in his mouth. He actually says it. So somebody's whispered that to him. I don't know who it is. It's like the only people who've ever talked about it are objectivists. Maybe it's Alex. Maybe it's somebody who's heard Alex talk about it. I don't know. But the only people who ever talk about nationalization as a bad thing and stealing and military action is justified in the face of nationalization are objectivists. I don't know anybody else who's talked that way. So maybe an objectivist got to him or got to somebody in his universe and whispered it in his ear. I don't know. Steve-O, how important is freedom of speech? Under what circumstances may the government prohibit lying? Read LA Police Protective League versus LA or US versus Alvarez. I haven't read any of those, but free speech is massively important. It's one of the most important rights that we have. And the government can only prohibit lying when that lying is used to gain a value, that is to gain a material object, and that it's called fraud. And there are clear definitions about what fraud is. So you can prohibit lying in order to get money. You can prohibit lying if the purpose of lying is to overturn an election. That is fraud. What Trump did in 2020 is fraud. Fraud is the use of a lie in order to gain a material value. Or change in behavior that has material consequences. And then you can sue for fraud. So the government prohibits fraud. It also prohibits threats and incitement. And defining incitement is not easy. You need to really think that through. But yeah, so I haven't read those, but other than that, you can lie, but you have to suffer the consequences of lies. And again, if the lies are lies that actually you get something for it, that is not allowed. That's fraud. You cannot commit fraud. Again, you'd have to ask a lawyer in terms of the technical definition of fraud. Steve-O, do you like French dip sandwiches? Not particularly. Do you like Better Felipe or Cole's, both in Los Angeles? Never eaten at either one of those. Which one invented the sandwich? I have no idea. Thank you, Steve-O. Cobb, why do you think brutalist is not objectivist? Well, I haven't seen the movie yet. When I see it, I'll give you a definitive answer. Because the objectivist architecture is not brutalist. And from my understanding, not firsthand, secondhand, the hero of the brutalist does not represent objectivist values, objectivist aesthetics, or objectivist values. But I'll tell you once I watch the movie, which I will watch. What's your view of the Hudson River School? Was there any great American art movement in history? I guess the Hudson Movement School is the closest it comes to a great American visual arts. I mean, jazz is a great art, American arts. But other than that, I'm trying to think. Movies, cinema is a great American art. But in terms of the visuals of painting, sculpture, there's some good artists, but nothing on a world level. I mean, Sargent is probably the best painter who is American, but he did most of his work in Europe and studied in Europe. But they just weren't. There were other good American painters, but there just wasn't a great American movement. The Hudson River School was good. It's primarily landscapes. Some of those landscapes are truly magnificent. Some of the most beautiful landscapes I've ever seen come from the painters in the Hudson River School. So I like their work. I think they're dramatic and beautiful and worthy. But do they match up to the great European schools of art? Maybe the Hudson Valley School, maybe a few artists here and there, but there weren't great visual art movements in the United States, sadly. Will you watch The Odyssey? Definitely. I'll definitely watch The Odyssey. That's the new movie by Christopher Nolan. Have you ever played Rummy Cube? What do you think of it? Do you think people can learn anything from playing cards? I played Rummy Cube a long, long time ago in my youth. I can't remember much about it. The only card game I really loved and really I thought was really, really good was Bridge. Bridge is a phenomenal game. And you can learn strategy, thinking skills, memory from playing bridge. Bridge is and communication skills. It really teaches you communication skills. It's really a thrilling game. It's the best, one of the best games ever. Bridge, and it's a hard game. You really requires thought. Hey, somebody did a Nemanj. That was a sticker from Bosnia-Herzegovina. Here's Andrew again. Okay, let's finish these. Cernic, could Trump be pivoted from militarization of cities to protecting military power towards election victories? No, I don't. Well, militarization, projecting military power is not necessarily good towards election victories. No, I don't think so. I think that the cities is too important to him. Too much of his ego is tied up in what happens in America. Andrew, I would think the objectivist attitude towards monks would be decidedly negative. You would think, in every aspect, the socialists, the really communists, and they believe in a God and devoting your life to something that doesn't exist. Horrible existence. If you're in control, this is John, if you're in control of the U.S. military, who would you take out first? Iran. No question about it. Iran, a long time ago, and that would have been my number one priority, taking that out. That regime out should have been done 30 years ago. Better late than never. And other than that, I wouldn't do much. I mean, maybe something like what we just did to Maduro. Not much. If you could do it without shedding blood, take out the Cuban regime, I would work to do those things, but would not want to risk the lives of soldiers for it. So do it without risking soldiers' lives. I would take out the Cuban regime. But other than that, you have to really monitor North Korea and worry about North Korea and make sure you can defend yourself against any kind of launch from them. All right, last two questions. Andrew, $50. My contributions will slow down in the new year as I have to refocus on Korea more. Still, I'm happy to be generous to the show over the last 2 weeks. You've had the second most effect on helping change my psychoepistemology after Rand. Thank you, Andrew. I really, really appreciate that. Sorry you'll have to slow down, but I completely understand. And hopefully we'll find others to take your place and to ramp up in your place. And I really appreciate the last 2 weeks. It's been a lot of money. I haven't added it up, but I guess you have. What is your view on the digital ID nonsense and age verification sweeping across the world? Seems like government and cohorts to bring about global censorship. Yes, I think governments want control. We know that, and they're looking for ways to control you. Now, granted, there is some issue around pornography and what you do about it with children, but that should be primarily the parents' responsibility in terms of how what kind of blockers they put on their computers at home and on the phones and all of that. But yes, there's no question that governments around the world are going to use technology that is evolving to try to control us and to try to influence us and to try to gain more power over our lives. That is what governments do. All right, this is the last one, please. Why did Ayn Rand say in an interview with Tom Snyder that she wouldn't like her philosophy to attract as many people as religions do? I don't remember saying that, but my guess is that she didn't want that kind of attraction. It's not so much about the numbers, it's about the kind of attraction, the attraction of accepting things on faith, which I think is the only way you would gain that kind of following in a short period of time, is if people just embrace you out of faith. She wanted adherents to philosophy who were real, actual thinkers. And she didn't think that the masses were actually that. So she didn't want mindless followers. That's a good way to put it. All right, thank you guys. Really appreciate it. I'm going to go to dinner. I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget, you can support the show on Patreon, patreon.com. Yaron Brook Show. Become a monthly supporter. That is huge. That is the one way you can contribute to the show the most. And I will see you all on Monday. Yes. Next Sunday, not this Sunday, next Sunday, we will have a members-only show. So become a member between now and Sunday and join us for that show. Talk to you on Monday. Bye, everybody.